What's good, everybody? It's Batman, and what we're going to be doing a Naruto reaction video. We're going to be doing it to our boy Naruto Explained. If you guys have not, basically don't know who this is or anything, make sure to check him out. He's really a good guy. He's mainly a channel that focuses on Naruto content and everything, literally hence in the name. Really good guy, like 279,000 subscribers. Really good content, really good stuff. He has like tons of playlists and tons of things you can check out and whatnot. Kind of similar to what like Swag and Seth do, but in his own way to certain degrees. He's more of the lore guy, more of the background knowledge and all that. So his videos are pretty freaking good. And overall, he's definitely one of the popular Naruto channels, at least I think, in my opinion, and that I'm even subscribed to and everything. So, yeah, definitely check him out, guys. I'll make sure to put his account in the link in the description down below. But we're gonna be checking his video, basically, on what if Obito never gave Kakashi the Sharingan, which is really interesting because this just came to my mind recently, and I was gonna do my own video on this, and basically separate of like, and basically it would be like, what if Obito took back the Sharingan from Kakashi? Because that's what was always interesting to me. I feel like in character, Obito would always give him the Sharingan. Like, before he's about to die, the whole rock incident and everything in the war. You know what I mean? But, like, I feel like at a certain point that it could have gone either way when he saw Kakashi kill Rin. That would have made him like, oh, fuck you, Kakashi, and bared some hatred towards him and, you know what I mean? Like, in some anger. And that at that point, you know what I mean? Instead of him just walking away, I really do feel like it would have been not only the most intelligent decision to, like, take his Sharingan back that he gave him, you know what I mean? Out of, like, respect, because at that point he would lose respect for Kakashi because he wasn't able to fulfill his promise, yada yada, which brought him to despair, the whole 9 yards, you name it. So overall, it would actually make some type of logical sense for him to take back the Sharingan. And taking back his own Sharingan would be a big fucking deal because he would have access to two Mangekyo's Sharingan, basically his own version of EMS, due to Hashirama's cells and constantly healing and him never losing, like, sight and all that in his light. And it would just be really, really interesting. And at that point, it'd be like, what would go down? How would the story go? Would it change drastically? Would it not? And it would be really interesting to kind of make a video on and talk about, and kind of go into detail and basically of how powerful Obito would be with his two Sharingan and overall what would happen, So that's why I'm going to be doing my own video on it. And I'm going to do my very best to make it like very condensed and nothing too crazy or too long. Just briefly explaining like how powerful he would be, and then how the story would change, So I think that would be very interesting. But we're going to see what his take is. It's about 22 minutes long, so not too bad. And he's basically starting it from the moment of, like, if Obito's like, nah, I'm not giving him my Sharingan. You know what I mean? Which I feel like is very out of character. But, at the end of the day, we're going to see what happens. And, dude, go. What's it called? And we'll go from there. And I apologize, my cat always doing some stupid shit. But we're going to check them out. No face cam for this video or anything, guys. Just going to be my beautiful voice. And we're going to go and progress.
When Obito Uchiha decided to give Kakashi his Sharingan, it changed the Naruto series forever. Kakashi went on to become a legend, being known as someone who copied over 1,000 ninjutsu with the Sharingan. The entire time that Obito rehabbed under Madara's care, he thought tirelessly of returning to the village to rejoin Kakashi and Rin. However, what if this never happened? What if Obito never gave into his moment of emotion and never gave Kakashi the Sharingan? Just how would the Naruto story change? Would it be for better or would it be for worse? Just to be clear, I'm not going to be using the moment where Obito saved Kakashi from the boulders, but instead, I'll be starting this what if right after Obito is crushed by the boulders because I find this scenario to be more intriguing than the other one, but I can do the other version if you guys are interested in the outcome, since that outcome would be different than what's in this video. So if we can hit 5,000 likes, I'll make that as a future what if video. And just as a side note, the what if Naruto married Sakura has reached the required number of likes, so I'll begin working on a part 2 to that as well. Now, with that being said, let's jump into this month's What If. So, going all the way back to volume 27 of the Naruto manga, in chapter 243, when Obito gave Kakashi the Sharingan, originally Obito chose to do so after watching Kakashi break down into tears at his failure of allowing the boulder to fall on Obito, and at Kakashi not being able to lift the boulder off of his teammate. It was hearing Kakashi state that he was a bad Jonin because he allowed Rin to get captured on the first mission and allow Obito to be crushed that Obito remembered that he never gave Kakashi a gift for making the rank of Jonin. This led to Obito giving Kakashi a Sharingan, as we all know. However, in this scenario, despite hearing Kakashi crying, the idea to give Kakashi the Sharingan would never cross Obito's mind. Instead, Obito would say nothing. His eyes would be on Rin instead of Kakashi, as Obito accepted the fact that he was likely about to die. Now, this is where the story makes its first major change. Originally, the Stone Ninja who fought against Obito and Kakashi had been sitting outside drinking and recovering his stamina. He wrongfully believed that Team Minato had been crushed to death by the boulders and was preparing to leave when Kakashi suddenly challenged him again with Obito's Sharingan activated. If you go back to the events, the Stone Ninja flat out stated that he had lost a good source of information by...
Okay, so this is actually interesting, because the fact that Obito didn't give him the Sharingan, he wouldn't have had the Sharingan at this moment, meaning he wouldn't be able to perfect his Chidori, meaning that I think Kakashi probably would have died here if he was charging at the guy. Like, either they both would have died, or he would have died. Because he was really fucking fast, and he was only able to beat him due to the Sharingan, being able to perceive it, and then, you know, them having the same speed, and then bam, he got his ass, you know? So, that's an interesting moment. Actually, this is interesting, because, like I said, I think it's out of character. I don't think this would ever happen, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, like, you know, let's say if it did, this would be an interesting aspect of how it would change in Naruto. I do, like, think that's very interesting in my opinion.
By killing Team Minato, which further confirms that he thought that all the members were dead. It's very likely that in this scenario he leaves the scene, since he hadn't gotten any information out of Rin when he had placed on a genjutsu, and he wouldn't have known about Team Minato's mission, so there would have been no reason for him to stick around because he believed they were all dead. No battle with Kakashi means that the other Stone Ninja don't show up, which is going to be really important. When you go back and look at the manga version of events, it was their combination attack that caused the earth to shift completely in a way that it caused Obito's body to be crushed by all the falling boulders falling on top of him. After several minutes pass by, Minato will likely show up just as he did originally by using the Flying Thunder God to teleport to the kunai that Kakashi was carrying around. Minato would immediately see that Kakashi was blinded in one eye and half of Obito's body being crushed by the other boulder. Minato would immediately go into Sage mode, lift the boulder off of Obito, and then teleport his team back to Konoha's base of operations during the war. The events of Naruto chapter 602 would also be altered as well.
Okay,
where Madara based on a genjutsu.
Okay, this is weird, because basically the direction that he goes is, he's like, oh, he thought they were dead, whatever, blah, blah. But the rocks and all this stuff, the whole cave was coming down, though. And then I would have to rewatch this, because I'm a little confused, because from my memory, the cave is kind of, you know, falling down and everything. It hit Obito. They're kind of talking and all that. Then Obito gives the Sharingan. He gets out, and then he challenges the guy again. So, but the way he portrays it is like, oh, he didn't know they were alive, blah, blah. And Obito's just under a rock, and then they both get out, and then Minato comes and then saves the day, and then they're all alive? Like, I don't know about all that. That's a little weird. But whatever, we'll progress it.
Pass through the boulder completely, going where Madara called Obito's survival a pure miracle because his entire side should have been crushed, and he said that it appeared as if Obito had passed through the boulder completely. Going by Madara's words, it really appears as if he had Obito under surveillance because he knew quite a bit about Obito before Obito even came to and before Obito started speaking. However, despite the fact that Obito's body would have been near the underground passage that Madara created, Madara wouldn't be able to act to retrieve Obito before Minato showed up to save him, and also it's very telling that Madara waited until everyone thought Obito was dead in order to try and take his body. The fact that Kakashi and Rin were there, that leads me to believe that Madara would not act. Given how careful of a planner that Madara is, I have no doubt that he would have another Uchiha under surveillance at that same time. This means that Madara would never have the seals placed on Obito and Rin's heart like he revealed in chapter 675 of the Naruto manga. This would also mean that Rin would never become the Jinchuriki of the Three Tails. With Obito now back in the Hidden Leaf Village, undergoing intense surgery to repair his body, and the rehab that follows in the months afterwards, Madara would finally be forced to pick another Uchiha if he hadn't done so already. I do think that Kakashi and Rin...
Yeah, so this is really interesting. I was not expecting that at all. Basically, the direction I was expecting was, you know, like, it would go out the same route that it did in the story, and then Kakashi would come out with no Sharingan, you know what I mean? And then he would either probably retreat with Rin, because that would be the best thing, because if he were to fight against that ninja, he more than likely would have died, okay? Or it would have been a stalemate, you know what I mean? But I feel like it would have made more sense for, like, Kakashi to wait, you know what I mean? Or he would either retreated, you know what I mean? And then that would have been that, and whatever. And then eventually, obviously, Minato would have came. But it's either Kakashi would have died, okay, or he would have retreated. It's one of the two. That's basically how that would have went. That Shinobi was very, very fucking fast. So, it's interesting. The fact that they're all alive, very, very interesting.
To complete their mission, which would be one of the factors that led to the end of the Third Great Ninja War. However, Kakashi wouldn't be viewed as a legend. In the many years that passed, Obito would regain some of his strength and mobility, but the doctors in Konoha would likely come to the same conclusion that Madara did when he first looked at Obito's injuries, which was that Obito's body was wrecked beyond repair and that Obito's life as a ninja was essentially over with unless he had extreme modifications done to him, like what Madara did when he stuck part of the Zetsu on Obito's body. However, I do believe in a random conversation with Jiraiya that Minato would be reminded of Tsunade.
I think we should
got
explore
the ads.
solutions.
My
Great
favorite
suggestions.
part.
And I do believe that Minato and Jiraiya could have brought Tsunade back to the village to heal Obito and do whatever modifications are needed in order to repair his body, be it artificial limbs that are made from something other than Hashirama cells, since Tsunade wouldn't have known about that, or some other tactic that Tsunade likely would have came up with. Most importantly, Kushina Uzumaki would never have the QB extracted from her. This would mean that Naruto Uzumaki would grow up with both of his parents.
Wait, did the two recordings just drastically change? Like, it was like a whole other, like, tone, and then now it's this one. Huh?
And would never have been made into a Jinchuriki. Now, this is where a very drastic change occurs. No attack on the village by the QB means that Danzo wouldn't have been able to move the...
Wait a minute, she wouldn't have been a Jinchuriki. Why not? I don't understand that change either. Now I'm just confused. I'm trying to, like... What did he say of why she doesn't become
Uchiha to the
Jinchuriki?
edge of the village, which this would mean that Naruto Uzumaki would grow up with both of his parents. He wouldn't have known about that, or some other tactic that Tsunade likely would have came up with. Most importantly, Kushina Uzumaki would never have the QB extracted from her. This would mean that Naruto Uzumaki would grow up with both of his parents.
Okay, he has to elaborate on that and explain why. Because, like, it's one thing to change things in the Naruto story, whatever, yeah, sure. But, like, if you're going to change something, shouldn't there be some type of logical reasoning of why it changed? You know what I mean? Something maybe more in character, you know? Like, you can't just say, oh, this just happens or whatever. Like, you got to explain. I'm assuming he might explain. But if he doesn't, that is confusing. The fact that she's not being given the Jinchuriki. Because I would have to go back to the manga chapter. I think it's when she's talking to Naruto when he's learning how to try to require the power of the Nine Tails, and she kind of explains why she became the Jinchuriki, blah blah, this and that, because at the end of the day she's an Uzumaki, and you know what I mean, and their life force is very, very powerful. They have a lot of chakra, really good with sealing jutsu, so they're perfect candidates to be for Jinchuriki. So I don't understand why she wouldn't have been the next selection. That doesn't really make sense to me. Because the one before, which was, I believe, the first Hokage's wife, was also an Uzumaki, and she had red hair, same traits, yada yada, you name it. So, if anything, she is one of the most perfect candidates to choose for to be a Jinchuriki. I don't understand why he's saying that's never gonna happen. That's really freaking weird.
Would never have been made into a Jinchuriki. Now, this is where a very drastic change occurs. No attack on the village by the Kyuubi means that Danzo wouldn't have been able to move the Uchiha to the edge of the village, which was one of the last straws that broke the backs of the Uchiha clan. With Minato being alive and no Kyuubi attack, Danzo's plans to have the Uchiha clan wiped out would be essentially put on hold.
See, now that I do agree with, okay, and the reason why is because, you know, they didn't really start getting, you know, secluded until the Nine Tails attack. And I do agree, the Nine Tails attack more than likely would have never happened. The only way that could have even been remotely possible at all is if, you know what I mean, like Madara was to have someone else in place to basically control as an Uchiha to manipulate the darkness and yada yada. But to be honest, really the only person he could have probably been able to conspire with or whatnot would have been maybe Itachi's dad. You know what I mean? Definitely not Itachi. Definitely not Shisui. You know, he's not that dumb. I feel like Itachi's dad probably would have been the best next candidate. Or if he was even more patient, what would have actually been interesting is if Madara took interest into Sasuke, because at the end of the day, Sasuke is the next reincarnation for Indra. You know what I mean, and whatnot. And if he were to maybe kind of like orchestrate something drastic to happen, and basically make him go the route of, you know, vengeance and being evil and seeing no, you know, point in life and etc. Like, I feel like that would have been interesting, because there is a point in the manga where Madara is, like, literally states to himself, it's during the war arc where he's like, man, I actually wish that maybe I could have waited a little longer, because if I could have been able to use him instead of Obito, that would have changed things drastically, blah, blah, this and that, yada, yada, and etc. And it would have just been more beneficial. And overall, it would have been very interesting that if he waited, instead of using Obito, he would have used Sasuke. And that would have changed things drastically, and that would have been very interesting as well. You know, so overall, like, you know, it's interesting. But yeah, I do agree that wouldn't really have happened. It's just, I'm curious where he's going to take this now, because it's like, is he really going to talk about what Madara would try to do now, or what direction that could possibly go? Because all the events that happen mainly happen due to Obito. And the fact that Obito is no longer really in the picture like that, or to be the evil guy, like, what would Madara do? Would he still try to fuck with Obito? Or would he wait, or would he forget about Obito, maybe do with Itachi's dad? Or do you think he'd be even more patient and try to work with Sasuke and manipulate him like he did with Obito? What do you guys think? So we'll kind of leave that at that.
Uchiha wouldn't be pushed as far along to rebel. Minato would continue to take great interest in Obito's recovery, and it would be noted that he is the reason for Obito getting this operation to begin the path to becoming a ninja once again. As I've covered in other videos, Fugaku felt as if Konoha would never pass over their hate for the Uchiha and put one of them on the path to becoming Hokage. Under this scenario, Minato would do exactly as what was implied in the Naruto manga, which
that is true. Minato did state to Obito during the war arc that he would have put him up for a selection to become the next Hokage. That is true. I remember that.
Means that he would have taken a greater interest in Obito's development with the intention of one day making him Hokage. While Danzo would be all too aware of Minato's intention to groom Obito to become the 5th Hokage, he wouldn't be in position to act. Seeing one of their own being put on the fast track to becoming Hokage would likely quell any of the anger that the Uchiha clan had, because their rebellion was largely founded on the fact that they hoped for change in their conditions. Kakashi very likely wouldn't go on to become an Anbu under the scenario, though it is possible that Minato places him in Anbu with hope of further pushing Kakashi to meet his full potential. Over the years, Obito and Rin would join Kakashi at the rank of Jonin. Seeing the Hokage work so closely with the Uchiha, one in particular who was well known to go out of his way to help the elderly and the helpless, would cause some of the lingering distrust towards the Uchiha to vanish over the years. In time, Obito would go on to master his Sharingan and lead a team of Genin, just as Kakashi and Rin would. However, it should be noted that Obito would not have the Mangekyo Sharingan in the scenario.
That is true.
Given neither of his teammates would be dead, Kakashi very likely wouldn't fail every set of Genin who were assigned to him before he was assigned Team 7. Itachi and Shishui would go on to become well-respected ninja in the village, both feared for their immense talents. Shishui would be known as Shishui of the Body Flicker and would be known for his genjutsu prowess. It is possible that Danzo would move to take Shishui's eye, especially if it becomes open knowledge that Shishui has Mangekyo, but I don't believe that Danzo would have this opportunity. Originally, he got the chance to do so because Shishui was being used by the third Hokage to spy on the Uchiha clan. In this scenario, there wouldn't be any tension with the Uchiha, which makes Shishui's role non-existent in this scenario. Minato wouldn't transfer the power of the police department over to the Anbu like Sarutobi did, since he wouldn't be as easily influenced by Danzo and the other elders. Naruto, having both of his parents alive,
$300 for that and $2,000 for this, way too expensive. But today I'm going to show you guys how to get all this stuff for a lot cheaper. Okay, so first, go to one of your favorite
means that he would grow up extremely skilled. He wouldn't have the QB interfering with his ability to mold chakra, which means that it's very likely that he learned several of the Uzumaki sealing jutsu. In fact, as we are currently seeing in the Boruto anime and in the Boruto manga, it's very possible that Naruto enters the academy a little bit spoiled, but also knowing high-level ninjutsu like the Shadow Clone Jutsu. Also, with both of his parents there to train him, just like Boruto, Naruto would very likely know several changes in chakra nature by the time he becomes a Genin. Sasuke would likely be even more skilled as a ninja under the scenario.
And this is a whole interesting concept as well, because I think it's like a filler arc that happens in the anime, where literally, if you like reflect back on it, it's like a what if scenario, like if, you know, Naruto had his parents and Uchiha whatever massacred, blah blah, yada yada. And it really goes the route of showing how like powerful Sasuke is getting with, you know, the Uchiha around and everything, and it goes into Naruto with him being supervised and trained by Minato and everything, and etc. And they both, you know, get pretty freaking strong. So yeah, that would make sense. I do agree with that type of logic. The question is, to me, which this is also an interesting topic to kind of like ponder about, is do you think Minato would have taught Naruto the Flying Raijin? That would be interesting. You know what I mean? Because obviously Minato would eventually try to teach him Sage Mode, Rasengan, you know, Shadow Clones, you name it, whatever. But do you think he would try to work with him with that ability as well? I think it's a very high possibility, and I don't see why not. Especially with how much of Naruto's chakra reserves he has just of his own. So those are just kind of things to kind of put into consideration. And at the end of the day, it does go a long way of having your parents and them being able to train you, supervise you, and you name it. Like, things are tremendously more difficult for Naruto because he didn't have anyone to train him or to help him. He had to do it basically all on his own until he met Kakashi, which Kakashi briefly trained him with basic things. And then eventually got to the point where he met Jiraiya, and Jiraiya was teaching him a lot, you know. But, you know, he didn't really have a lot of assistance. It was still more of him having to act independently on his own. So this would definitely go a long way. And at that point, that's when it just gets to the whole conversation of like, like, how much do you think he would know? How strong do you think he would be? Like, it's really, really interesting.
Since his older brother Itachi would be alive to occasionally train him, but he would also serve as a constant motivation for him to get stronger. Sakura and Ino would still spend their days getting a tingly feeling in their panties whenever Sasuke did some mediocre thing that they perceived to be awesome. Hinata would still likely take notice of Naruto as she twiddled her thumbs from behind whatever dark and secluded corner that she was spying on him from behind. By the time Team 7 graduates the academy, if Obito's team hadn't already become Chunin, then I could very well see Minato making Obito the Jonin charged with leading Naruto's development. Due to the fact that Naruto would likely be smarter, or at least smart enough.
I think so too, and that's actually really interesting to talk about as well. Like, would Obito be the Jonin leader for Team 7? Like, would it be Obito in charge of like Naruto? You know what I mean? And whoever else, and then Kakashi would be in charge of like Sasuke and whatever, yada yada. Like, that'd be really weird and interesting. I don't know how that would really go, or what would be like the best way to go about it. Because generally the way they formate their teams and whatnot is, you know, due to weaknesses and strengths and from the worst to the best, and that's kind of how they build their 3-man squads, you know. And it's really interesting. So I don't know, like I feel like freaking if it really came down to it, I feel like Obito would more than likely have Sasuke on his team. You know what I mean? And the reason why is mainly due to the fact that like he's an Uchiha, he can be able to help him, whatever. You know, and then Kakashi would more than likely have Naruto on his team. You know what I mean, and whatnot. But like, like I said, it's just weird. It's like, do you think Obito gets Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura, or do you think Kakashi still gets all 3 of them, or do you think they're kind of split at that point, where Sasuke's with Obito and Naruto's with him, or vice versa? It's really, really weird, and that's a whole other thing to kind of think about and whatnot. But this is when, like I said, this is the type of stuff that really gets juicy and interesting. It's like things could just change so drastically and be so like complex, and it really is interesting to talk about. You know what I mean? Like this is like podcast worthy type conversations. Like this would be really, really cool. So I don't know, but I'll let you guys be the judge of that and comment down below what you think with that if you're curious or what you think. But it's very, very interesting.
That he doesn't finish at the bottom of his class, then this changes a lot. Originally, Naruto failed the graduation exam 3 times before he finally passed. Given he would be more skilled under the scenario, Naruto very likely passes on his first try, but no later than his second attempt, which means that it's very likely that he's placed in the graduation class of Team Guy. Naruto graduating early means that the Land of Waves arc unfolds drastically different. Assuming that Obito does hold his team back to further their development, we likely would see Naruto getting agitated and asking for a tougher mission. If his team isn't out of the village, the moment Kakashi's team is attacked, Minato would learn of the trouble befalling the Land of Waves. I believe that Minato would have his former team accompany Tazuna to the Land of Waves. Zabuza and Haku would be forced to fight Obito, Kakashi, and Rin. I believe that eventually the 2 of them would be defeated by Team Minato. I don't believe the Sand Village would go through with their plan for an invasion because you have Minato as a Hokage. I believe that by the time the time skip occurs, Minato very likely would step down as Hokage and name Obito as the 5th Hokage. The reason being is that Naruto and his team at this point would likely have become Chunin, meaning that Obito doesn't have to directly oversee the development of Naruto. It is also worth noting that Danzo and the other 2 elders only served as the Hokage's advisors because they had a direct connection to the 3rd Hokage. I do believe that at this point, one of the elders would be removed from their duties to make room for Minato as an advisor. The members of Team Taka would likely still be kept as test tube subjects for Orochimaru, in particular Suigetsu. Obito's first real test as Hokage comes when the Akatsuki begin their movements. Obito would be well aware of the Akatsuki given the fact that Jiraiya would have still spied on Orochimaru and learned that he joined the group, which means
that's so weird. Now he's jumping to like the whole Akatsuki. Like he didn't even discuss like, you know, like the tuning exam stuff. He didn't really discuss like Orochimaru doing his whole attack, and now he's just jumping to the Akatsuki. Like you kind of gotta briefly at least cover those things. You know what I mean? Like to like kind of how you think it would go, whatever this and that. You know what I mean? Generally stay on the direction of the story. You know, and know when to basically change certain things due to what circumstances are now happening. You know, cause and effect basically. But the fact that he's just jumping in that's a little weird because it's like, you know, the Akatsuki wouldn't really truly be a thing if it wasn't for Obito either. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, fucking the Akatsuki was originated like in, you know, with the Hidden Rain and all that and whatnot and etc. But like Nagato doesn't really like go like the evil plan direction until shit hits the fan, and then he goes back to Obito and he's like, yeah, you were right, blah blah. Like let's accomplish true peace, etc. And then they kind of go from there. But it's a little weird because since Obito's not evil, you know what I mean? And we don't know what Madara would have done or who he would have chose at that point or whatever. Like, or if he's like even still in the picture at all, you know, or what. Like, there's a lot of things that he hasn't done to fill in the blanks. That's my only problem with this. You know, he didn't really explain the direction with Madara, what he was going to do now. He didn't really explain who's going to be the Obito figure now. You know what I mean? Like, that's important. So that's a little weird. So I am intrigued of what the Akatsuki is going to basically be, consist of, or at least a direction from this point. Because that's the only confusion I would really have, if that makes any sense remotely.
Incentive to tell Minato that this group is after his wife, who is the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki. Given there wouldn't be a strong relationship between the Sand and Leaf Village, there would be no reason for the Sand Village to call the Hidden Leaf Village for help when Gaara gets captured. Given Jiraiya's ability to gather intelligence, it remains possible that Jiraiya learns of the capture of the Tailed Beast, especially since he wouldn't be tasked with training Naruto during the nearly 3-year time skip. However, since Jiraiya is confirmed to have spent more time looking into the details of the Akatsuki leader, I do believe that he wouldn't have learned of their capture, since his focus would largely be on learning about the Akatsuki and why Orochimaru joined them. This would mean that as the Tailed Beasts are captured, Jiraiya would continue to search for information on the Akatsuki leader. Hidan and Kakuzu would likely still invade the Land of Fire to collect the bounty on Chiruku. This is where things get interesting. Originally, Asuma died in this battle. However, Minato being alive changes everything. In the manga, Asuma's team fought a losing battle against Hidan and Kakuzu because they were waiting for backup to arrive. Given Minato would know about the Akatsuki being after his wife, it's very possible that Minato has each of the teams carrying kunai.
Oh, wait a minute. So she does have it? Didn't he say that she didn't? Now I'm confused. Whatever, we'll ignore that for now.
And Obito commands them not to engage the Akatsuki until they send word from Minato. The moment Asuma's team makes
Oh god, I love fucking ads. Holy shit, dude.
contact with the Akatsuki, word would be sent back to the village, and Asuma very likely would make the safe call to merely observe their movements until Minato shows up. When Minato finally arrives, Asuma's team likely serves as backup to Minato. I don't think anyone can foresee a situation where Minato falls in battle to each of these Akatsuki members. He has Asuma and Shikamaru, two very brilliant minds to analyze the situation, and Minato himself is a generational genius. Though Kotetsu and Izumo are too fodder in comparison, they are still two ninja who made the rank of Chunin, which is something that does need to be noted. I believe that if Minato engages Hidan first, he likely would find a way to restrict his movement. With Hidan out of the picture, an intense battle with Kakuzu would ensue. Kakuzu has multiple hearts that requires him to be killed several times over. Given Minato is more skilled than Kakashi, who managed to kill Kakuzu twice, I believe that Minato, alongside Asuma, Shikamaru, Izumo, and Kotetsu, would manage to kill Kakuzu with a very high grade of difficulty. After taking Hidan back to the village, an intense interrogation would begin, with the Ibiki likely using
that right there I'm gonna change. There would be absolutely no difficulty at all. If Minato had to fight against Kakuzu, even with his 5 hearts and everything, he would get fucking stomped. He'd be way too fast for Kakuzu to even deal with. Be hitting nothing but, like, just teleporting, rising Gons, you know what I mean? Could be even potentially seal him. You know, overall, he would just get bodied. And if he goes to Sage mode, it's a guaranteed, like, you gotta remember, his power alone was on the level of a 50% Rising Shuriken. And we don't know if that means, like, for his kunai strikes, for his taijutsu, or if that's just for his Rasengan. Like, at the end of the day, I'm interpreting that it's mainly directed to his Rasengan, ninjutsu power at least. Maybe even his kunai, because we have seen that his kunai was able to cut the 8 tails, you know, like tentacles off and everything, which is pretty insane, because the third Raikage with his, like, lightning spear finger jutsu was able to replicate those same feats, but he needed lightning ninjutsu to do that while he's doing it with a fucking kunai. So, you know, at the end of the day, he has crazy amount of AP with Sage Mode and all that, teleportation, flying, Raijin, sealing abilities, you name it, the whole 9 yards. Kakuzu and Hidan would get fucking destroyed. And especially with Shikamaru and Asuma being there and you name it, like, that's just it. That's just a G fucking G. And not only that, if we're really speaking on that whole arc, they could go so many fucking ways, in my opinion. I do feel like it would be the best. It would make more sense to send Minato to deal with it as well, because, you know, he's just he's the GOAT. So out of anyone, it wouldn't really be Kakashi or anyone else or whatever. It would be more with him, you know. So I do agree with that. But, yeah, no, it would not be high difficulty.
Torture technique that he knows to extract information, but he can also call in someone from the Yamanaka clan or the Uchiha clan to gain information, this is where yet another part in the story needs to be addressed. Itachi's illness at this point had him near death and taking medicines to prolong his life. However, if we take into consideration the Naruto Jinrai novel, which chronicles Sasuke's journey during the 13 days after Itachi's death and him agreeing to join Akatsuki, then it can be strongly assumed that Itachi's illness is directly related to his Mangekyo Sharingan. However, for the sake of keeping continuity intact, I'm going to assume that even though Itachi doesn't have Mangekyo, since Shisui never would have died, Itachi still manages to get sick. Itachi being in the village means that once again plot protection queen Tsunade Senju herself arrived with a mysterious miracle cure to save Itachi's life. At this point, Jiraiya would come to both Minato and Obito with news that he has intel on the Akatsuki leader's location. This is where a very drastic change in the story would indeed occur. Originally, Jiraiya turned down Tsunade's offer to accompany him to the Hidden Rain village. In this scenario, he's more likely to accept help, most likely from Minato. If things get out of hand, Minato could simply teleport them out of harm's way. Konan could still end up confronting both of them, but I believe that Nagato would not send her out to do so until all 6 paths of pain were ready to be dispatched. Konan wouldn't be going up against just her former teacher, who she knew the weaknesses to his jutsu, but she would also be going against Minato, a legend from the last great ninja war, which is why Nagato likely plays it smart. The 6 paths of pain would very likely confront Jiraiya and Minato. In the battle that ensues, despite not knowing the full power of their enemy and being outnumbered, the advantage still lies with Minato and Jiraiya. It is important to note that Pain cannot use his full power while fighting in the Hidden Rain village, or else he'll end up destroying the village itself. Minato has a mastered sage mode, and if Jiraiya can summon Ma and Pa Toad, he can become an imperfect sage. Between these two fighting alongside each other in sage mode, the 6 paths of pain would very easily be brought down, leaving Konan to flee the battlefield. Minato and Jiraiya would know that Nagato, Jiraiya's former student, is the one behind the Akatsuki. The smart thing to do would be to retreat.
So that's a really interesting. So we know what happened when Jiraiya fought the Paths of Pains. Like, he was able to take down 3, and that was due to him utilizing Genjutsu, and then Nagato just brought him back. You know what I mean? Ripped his arm off, started pressing him even more, and then killed him in the end. If Minato was there with Jiraiya as well, okay, that would be very interesting, because at the end of the day, there's a lot of conversation with it of what if this or that, but, basically, to keep it simple, if all 6 paths of pains are immediately presented, okay, like, it's interesting, because, with how powerful Nagato is in the paths of pains, that what he just stated, Nagato can't go, like, completely all out, because he would destroy the village and all that and everything, and it's questionable if he would or not. But, with that into consideration, and everything, it's really interesting what would happen, because at the end of the day, like, it's very interesting to discuss. Generally, you would think, like, oh yeah, Jiraiya and Minato, they definitely take it, right? But I don't know. I feel like it's a little bit more complex than that. And the reason why is because, we got to remember, Pain has all, the possibilities, and they have the link vision and everything, so we're able to cover each other's blind spots, you name it. Okay? And even if Minato is, like, doing, like, his flying Raijin and teleporting, as long as they're looking at each other and one another, okay, he's going to be able to dodge it no matter what. Like, it's just that fucking simple. Like, like, he'll be able to dodge and get out of the way as long as their vision is connected. I do truly believe that. That has been shown over and over and over with KCM 1 Naruto, with KCM, you know what I mean? Like, you name it, like, that level of speed is just not going to be enough, and at the end of the day, he would still be able to react and dodge. But now, if they're planning, and we all know how intelligent Minato is with analyzing and his intelligence, you name it, along with Jiraiya, you could obviously assume that they would probably make certain conditions or variables to make it to where they can't use their vision and all that. But it's so weird, because, if Pain is smart and he utilizes his abilities to a way to where either to catch him off guard, and, you know what I mean? Or a way to where he could be able to one-shot them, then obviously he'll more likely win whatever. Because it's either going to go that route where the element of surprise and no intel is going to be basically his W condition, or, him being able to pull off one of his hacks abilities and kill one of them, more than likely Jiraiya. And other than that, or it would just Jiraiya and Minato would just be able to kill them all, and bam, that's it, you know. And then they would have to basically figure out where Nagato is. Minato would more likely do the same thing Naruto did, find his location, and then it goes from there, bam. So either way, that, like I said, it's a whole other topic of who do you think would win the Paths of Pains against Minato and Jiraiya. You know, at the end of the day, if you say Minato and Jiraiya, that's fine. It makes sense. It's believable. I don't see what's so wrong with that. Could you maybe make some arguments for Pain? Sure. You know what I mean? But at the end of the day, we'll just kind of leave it at that. It's interesting. I do think it's really interesting, though, at least. Because Shinra Tensei is ridiculous. You know, it could be launched from anywhere. And at the end of the day, like, even if Minato was to teleport and get behind Pain, as long as they're looking at it, Shinra Tensei, bam, he's getting blasted away. Like, you know, like, fucking. So, like, I don't know. Like I said, it's a very contentious topic. I'm not going to go fully into it. Eventually, I might do my own video of Minato versus Pain and all that. But with Jiraiya being there, you know what I mean, with his abilities and all that, along with Minato, you know, like, I do think they could be able to pull it off. I don't see why not. So that's fine. Could Pain be able to pull it off? Sure, maybe. But we'll kind of just leave it at that and go from there. Now, one thing I will say, though, this might also be something that could happen, too. I feel like Pain will probably be pressured enough to be like, oh, fuck, this is very difficult to deal with, you know, to Sage Mode users, you name it, yada, yada. And overall, he'd probably be forced to summon the Ghetto statue. And the Ghetto statue is no fucking joke. You know what I mean? Like, that thing is really freaking powerful. You know, the Ten Tails Husk. And at the end of the day, if that is in the picture, I don't see how Minato and Jiraiya are going to favor it. Because imagine the Ghetto statue and the Paths of Pains or Tendo Pain fighting against. That's a whole game changer as well. You see what I'm saying? So, like, it's interesting. But at the end of the day, you know, we'll kind of just leave it at that. You know, even with the Ghetto statue, could Minato and Jiraiya pull it off? More than likely, and so we'll just kind of stop there. But I don't know. It's an interesting fight. I think it's really cool and interesting.
With their knowledge and to meet with Obito to consider their options. Madara's disciple wouldn't be bold enough to risk yet another encounter with Minato, especially with all of the Uchiha clan being in Konoha to help defend the village. If Kisame is sent on the mission to capture Killer Bee, I see no reason why Kisame and Deidara wouldn't be able to capture Bee, though it remains possible that Deidara's explosions
Are you here to heal the world?
Morbius
attract way too much attention. The Raikage will likely call a 5 Kage summit. It's here that I believe the disciple of Madara Uchiha would find a way to announce his intention for war, making very specific note that he has the Rinnegan on his side as well as chakra from 7 of the 9-tailed beasts. Minato would likely serve as one of Obito's guards and be able to confirm that the Akatsuki does indeed have the Rinnegan. The humor in this situation would be when Killer Bee is isolated with Kushina Uzumaki. Bee would likely see Kushina as a MILF ripe for being hit on. However, the moment he mentions sliding his ox tentacle into her foxhole, she likely would beat the hell out of him.
Oh my god.
Being in the Akatsuki would mean that an army of Edo Tensei shinobi could still be assembled, which means that Zetsu likely leads Orochimaru to Madara's grave. By the time that the war begins, Obito would be at the headquarters with the other 5 Kage. Minato, though a powerhouse, would be enough to dispatch a platoon of Zetsu armies. However, I do believe that Minato would likely be the one to guard Kushina. Given Naruto would likely want to prove himself as being more than the son of Hokage, I believe that he would be on a platoon with several high-ranking ninja. Sasuke would likely be on a team led by Shisui or Itachi. Having the Uchiha clan fight in the war makes the battles much easier, given the Uchiha's Eye of Insight can foresee movements and the Eye of Hypnotism can handle an army of Zetsu by placing them on their Genjutsu. Naruto would prove to be very helpful in the fight with Reanimated Ninja, since he would have a plethora of sealing jutsu which are taught to him by Kushina over the years. The members of the Akatsuki would be deployed in full force, with members like Data and Sasori racking up high kill rates due to Data's abilities to use explosions and Sasori's poison. Nagato's new 6 paths of pain would make short work of whoever faced them in battle. Madara's new disciple could order Nagato to release the 7-tailed beast into the battlefield in order to be used. The Uchiha do have the ability to control the tailed beast, but it's
that's interesting. So he didn't even he said the passive pains would lose to Jiraiya and Minato, but he I guess he didn't really go further than that, and he didn't be or explain whether if they would find Nagato either, which is really interesting. So this clearly means that Nagato would still be alive and controlling the passive pains in the war and all that, which is really weird because he can only he can control the passive pains, but he has to be in a certain distance, and they can't be super fucking far. Otherwise, the weaker they get, whatever, blah blah, and this and that, you name it. So that is a little weird in my opinion. But we'll just kind of leave it at that.
Takes a very high level of skill and an enormous amount of chakra to do so. In all of Naruto, only 3 Uchiha were shown with the ability to do so. Given there would be reanimated ninja on the battlefield, a large group of Uchiha wouldn't be able to pull their collective efforts together to tame the remaining tailed beasts, and there's no guarantee that them working in tandem can subdue 1 or maybe even 3 of the tailed beasts. It's here that the 5 Kage would likely be called to the battlefield. Seeing the immense destruction would likely cause Obito to awaken his Mangekyo Sharingan. It should be worth noting there wouldn't be an army of Uchiha with Mangekyo, since it is hammered home numerous times in the Naruto manga that not every Uchiha has the potential to awaken Mangekyo. Obito, having both of his Mangekyo, would pose a very dangerous threat, enough so that Madara Uchiha would be likely called to the battlefield if he hasn't already been summoned.
So I'm gonna put out some things. Regardless of the whole Obito thing, okay, something that he's forgetting, Shishu would still have his Mangekyo Sharingan. Itachi wouldn't have it yet, unless something were to happen to admit it, but regardless of Itachi, I'm just going to state who would have it. Fugaku would have the Mangekyo, Shishu would have the Mangekyo, and who else? I'm trying to think. I think that would be about it. There's no one else that's really coming to my head. But those would be the only Mangekyo users. At the end of the day, I do feel like if the tail beasts were being used in war, that Shishiri and Fugaku would just basically go over there and just kind of control the tail beast. You know what I mean? With their Sharingan and whatnot under Genjutsu and everything, and they would kind of be the ones having to deal with the tail beast. That would make a lot more sense in my opinion. Because if you don't got wood style, then you're gonna have to use either a Sharingan or a Rinnegan, you know what I mean, to control them. So it's just that fucking simple. But yeah, so I feel like those, now with him getting it, that's really interesting, you know what I mean, from him either seeing death or an awakening. But in order for him to really get him in Mangekyo, he would have to see someone that's close or that he loves to die, meaning that he would need to explain who died in Naruto, of why he got it. Is it Kakashi? Is it, so that, in my opinion, is really interesting. He's not really explaining too much in that. I know there's only so much he's going to do, because at the end of the day, this video is already 20-something freaking minutes long. You know what I mean? For him, at least. Not for us covering it. So, but I'm just saying, there's a lot of things that weren't really put into consideration. If you're going to do a what-if scenario, you gotta, not, elaborate all day, every day, but just very shortly and brief of A, B, C, D, E, and so on and so forth. Because there's so many things that is just weird. For all this to even happen, the route, I feel like there's so many things that he didn't fill in the blanks with, to where it's just, I don't know, it's really, really weird. And that's all I'll say on that. But let's continue to see how it goes, and now he has fucking Mangekyo, and let's go from there.
Madara, seeing his clan being led by Obito, the very Uchiha that he originally wanted to take into his own, and who is now Hokage, would stir something inside of him, but Madara wouldn't waver from his plan, which was now close to being completed. Madara's fight with the 5 Kage, which would include Gaara's father and Obito, would be one to remember. Obito's Kamui would allow him to attack from a distance, while also making himself intangible for long periods of time. However, when Madara uses his Rinnegan Sharingan and his perfect Susanoo in tandem with the ability to use wood release, I do believe that the 5 Kage would fall, though it wouldn't be before Madara forces one of them to tell him where the 8 and 9 tails is. If for some reason Minato does arrive on the battlefield with both his wife and killer being towed, it's very possible that the outcome for this battle turns out very drastically different. Shishui being alive opens the door for him to step in to use Koto Matsukami on Madara, possibly forcing him to return to the realm of the dead. Minato could simply fight alongside the Kages until an opening is created to steal Madara away, with an extreme case being that Minato uses the Reaper Death Seal. Due to the enormous expenditure of chakra, having each of his 6 paths of pain fight countless battles, Nagato would eventually need to rest, which gives time for his location to be traced and for Nagato to be defeated by the likes of Obito or Minato. Eventually, Orochimaru's location would be detected, thus the revival of Kaguya would never happen. So that's it for my video today, guys. As you can see, Obito never giving Kakashi a Sharingan actually turns out to be a good thing. I know some of you guys are asking, what about Naruto and Sasuke's clashing, due to the fact that they're the reincarnates of Ashura and Indra. To that, I would say I don't think it would happen during the war, but instead much later on. Thanks so much for watching, guys.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. One thing, there was another point that he mentioned, like if the 5 Kage were fighting against Madara and Obito was there, obviously, instead of Tsunade. If Obito has fucking dual Mangekyo Sharingan, at least from my current knowledge, because it never hurts to do your homework and really review everything and then come to a conclusion of how you think it's going to go and so on and so forth. But I'm sorry, if Obito has a dual Mangekyo Sharingan, I don't see how Madara is dealing with that. Like, you can't, you know what I mean? Like, even if he were to have Edo, or to be an Edo with Rinnegan, okay, and perfect Susanoo, Kamui is fucking ridiculously broken, bro. Like, he can't hurt Obito, and then Obito can literally just Kamui him, you know, and then that's it, GG, you know, like, so, I don't know, I feel like that's really weird. Like, I don't really understand what Madara would be able to do against fucking Kamui, in my opinion, you know? And even if you don't grant that to Obito, if Obito awakens his Susanoo, okay, in any way, while utilizing Kamui, that's a big deal as well. You know, and either fucking way, like, I don't know, it's just really weird. Now, obviously, if Minato gets involved and he's helping along the way, you name it, along with everyone else and blah, blah, I think that's going to be too much for Madara at that point, you know? They more likely, so I do agree with that concept, that if Minato's there, that Madara would eventually fall and get sealed or whatever, or dealt with. But it's really interesting. Really, really interesting. So, but like I said, the video was good. You know, it was nice. Like, it's always interesting to see people's what ifs and how they think, you name it. Like I said, my only critique for this video was there was a lot of instances that he didn't really explain. You know what I mean? Like, just very short and brief, or just totally forgot about that was in the Naruto story to begin with. You know? So, regardless of all that, whatever, cool. But it was a good video. It was good. I liked it. It was cool. But let me know what you guys think. What do you think if Obito never gave Kakashi the Sharingan? How do you think that would have changed things from the moment it happened? You know? And just let me know. I'm going to be doing my own video on if Obito took the Sharingan back from Kakashi, meaning like right after he saw him kill Kakashi kill Rin. So like that's going to be basically the same stuff right there. And that's kind of where I would do it from there, meaning that we're still going to have an evil Obito, but the only difference, he's going to have 2 fucking Mangekyo Sharingan, which is along with Zetsu, which is a big fucking deal. So I'm going to do more of like a darker, more serious tone story. It's not going to be anything like too crazy, but that's going to be my direction. He basically started it from when Obito was being crushed with rocks and all that. And even though I didn't agree with the beginning of all that, because that was a little weird as well, how they all just ended up surviving and Minato got there. And like I said, I would have to recap and rewatch that moment again just to make sure I'm not tripping myself. But I'm pretty sure from my memory that the whole cave was falling apart, you name it, and Kakashi and Rin had to leave. Like, there was no way to, you know what I mean, to get him out of the rocks. They all would have died if they didn't leave. You know what I mean? And then when Kakashi and Rin got out, okay, Kakashi fought the guy because he had the Sharingan, you name it. So, I don't know. That was really weird what he did with all that. I feel like it should have gone the route to where either Kakashi would have retreated, or if you think Kakashi would have been emotional and bloodlusted and still wanted to fight the guy, he either would have died or they both would have been severely injured. And then maybe eventually Minato would have came, whatever. And that's a whole other thing, and that's okay too. But other than that, that's my only gripes. That's it. I'm done elaborating. This video is probably already long enough as it is. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like. Like I said, comment your thoughts down below. Give me your opinions and everything that was kind of discussed in the video, whatever. What's it called? Oh, another thing, like, what do you think would actually happen if Jiraiya and Minato fought against the Past the Pains? Like, you know, how do you think that would have been? And whatnot. I'm curious. Yeah. So, just anything in general, guys. Subscribe for more content. Subscribe, you guys, on the channel. And as always, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.